Okay, it looks like we're recording. Whew, okay. What's going on, guys? It's Corbin, and we are recording on my new set. As I mentioned in my last video, I mentioned that I was in the process of moving, and it's been a few weeks since that, and I've finally moved into my new apartment. I've also been working on my new set in my office. It's a work in progress, but I'm really excited to be showcasing you guys like the full set later on in an upcoming video. It's not finished yet. The background pretty much is. I think there's a couple more things I want to add to the background, but that's most of everything. But there is a table that I ordered that is coming in this week. I need a smaller table for this room for my arm for my microphone. Right now, I'm just holding the microphone, and that's why I'm wearing headphones, because like obviously it's moving around and you might hear some sounds, and I want to make sure I monitor that, make sure that everything sounds crystal clear and there's no distractions. So that's why, like that. I don't know what that was. So yeah, everything is not really finished in this room, including myself. I shaved recently. I've got a case of baby face, so I'm waiting for my beard to come back. So everything's just kind of a work in progress right now. However, I wanted to make a video as soon as possible. It took a while because I had to do the set this weekend. During the setup of the set, I actually saw the movie Speak No Evil. And I wanted to talk about it because there's some interesting things about the movie. One of them being is that like it was probably the most like played trailer at the movie theaters. It seemed like every time when we like went to the movie theaters, there was always a trailer for that movie, which is totally fine. It just means that the movie had some good marketing, and I'm all for like horror movies being marketed up and everything, specifically a psychological thriller like this. But I wanted to add a little bit more than just like my general thoughts on this movie and add some detail that people may not have known. This is actually an American remake of a Danish film called Speak No Evil. And I actually remembered seeing clips of this original movie on the Shudder Instagram page. So I never saw it, but when I found out that these two basically were connected, that this was a remake of this film from 2022, I kind of thought it was interesting, but it made me a little bit weary because this is actually something that Hollywood does a lot of the time. Some of us are not really aware of it, where they take a very critically acclaimed foreign film that has like a great score on Rotten Tomatoes, and they make it into an American remake for a wider, more general audience. And it doesn't do necessarily well critically compared to the original film. We've seen this before with films like Old Boy or even Wreck, which was turned into Quarantine. Most recently, that 911 movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, what was that called? The Guilty or something? That was originally a foreign film, and it was changed into an American remake on Netflix. This happens a lot, and usually, a lot of the times, the American remakes are not as good as the foreign films. For this particular one, after finding out that there was an original foreign movie, I decided that, hey, it's available on Shudder. I watched it with my girlfriend, and by God, that was a mistake. And I was surprised to find out that a majority, like half the movie is in English. Usually when there is an American remake of a movie, it's because like they want to take this great story and release it to like an English speaking audience. That's usually a lot of the times like why they do it, besides money. But while watching the original movie, I was surprised to find out that a majority of the movie is actually in English.
Yeah, there's just some things that makes us believe that it's the best that we go home.
What are those things? I want to know.
It's many things.
Such as?
There are secondary languages like Danish and Dutch, but half the movie is in English. So it begs the question why exactly they decided to remake this film, which we'll get into because a lot of it has to do with the original ending, but I'm not going to spoil it just yet. I'll warn you guys. So Speak No Evil is about a Danish family who are at a resort or like a family retreat or something like that, and they come across another family who's a Dutch family, and at this resort, they have like a really nice time. They kind of form this bond, and after they go back home, they're still like kind of exchanging letters, and the Dutch family decides to send them a letter saying like, hey, we loved hanging out with you guys. We'd love to invite you to our home. And they actually accept this offer, even though that they kind of just knew them for that weekend, but they thought they were incredibly friendly. So they actually take this invitation and they end up driving to this very secluded location, very much out in the woods. It takes a long time to get out there. And once they get out there, they start to recognize that things are not as they seem, or at least like maybe they're not as appealing as they thought they were when they initially met them. The movie is very good at kind of showcasing that awkwardness when you're with another family. Whenever you're like guests at a household and clearly they're trying to be cheery and welcoming, but there's something off where like maybe they scold their child in front of you, or maybe like they yell at their wife in front of you. The movie does like a really good job at that, where things just start to get incredibly uncomfortable. As the minutes pass on, things start to get incredibly worse. There's parts where like they go to dinner and the guy is drinking and driving, and they leave their kids home with like this unknown person to be a babysitter. And it just gets worse and worse to where it's just borderline inappropriate what they're doing. And they try to leave at one point, but then they're convinced that they should stay. And then everything seems fine for the most part. Then it gets to that scene where the kids are just dancing. You guys have probably seen this from like the American trailer, where the father is scolding his son in front of his guests. And that's just the defining moment where the family is like, this is not okay. We have to get out of here. Also, side note, it's revealed that the son on the Dutch side of the family has this disorder where he has like a small tongue and it's hard for him to communicate with others. That comes back, definitely. But that's pretty much where the two movies are pretty much the same. The endings are incredibly different in both of these films. We ended up seeing the first one on Shudder at home, and my girlfriend was like, I am not seeing this other one. We were disgusted. I am all for like horror and stuff like that, but we were incredibly upset with what we saw and deeply disturbed by all of this. And I mean, hey, I watched Terrifier. I mean, where is he? Yeah, he's right there. I watched Terrifier. Like, so that showcases like the amount of thick skin I have. But this ending was incredibly mean-spirited, and we'll get to that once we compare the differences of both films. So I went by myself, and it's basically a shot-for-shot remake. A lot of key moments happen in this film. There are a couple key differences that elevate certain scenes and stuff like that. For example, the wife of the Danish family, it's mentioned during this vacation trip that she is vegetarian and stuff. And when they go to the Dutch family's household, they're kind of pressuring her into eating meat because they made it and stuff like that. But she doesn't want to remind them that she was vegetarian because she wants to be a nice guest and everything. The same thing essentially happens in this film, but they really emphasize on how disgusting this is to her. There's like a scene where like she's like flossing in the bathroom and she pulls meat out of her teeth, and it's like, oh my God. The first film, when it came to like these uncomfortable scenes, it was incredibly subtle. Like, it felt like this was all happening somewhat in real time, and there was barely any music in the first one either.
Alsjeblieft, want ik word er een beetje gek van.
Stop telling my daughter what to do. It's not up to you to tell my daughter what to do.
It felt self-contained, and it really kind of felt just super uncomfortable. That first film is very, very subtle in terms of all of that. For example, there's one scene where they go out to dinner at this bar, and in the first movie, it's just like they're making out and dancing and stuff like that. Whereas in this American remake, they decide to like escalate it up where James McAvoy is getting a blowjob, or he's teasing about getting a blowjob under the table. It's just like they really heighten up the situations in the American remake. I will say that if there's any takeaway, like if you've seen the first one and you're wondering like, what's the point of me seeing like this new one, I will say that James McAvoy is the takeaway of seeing this remake. He is just so charming and just so fun to be around. In the first film, the Dutch guy isn't really that charming. He's just kind of nice, and he's like, oh, no, we promise, it'll be a great day. It'll be a great day. Whereas with James McAvoy, it's so believable to the point where you would stay with this family. They're very convincing. Another example of how this is really kind of Americanized to be like your basic horror movie. By the way, this was made by Blumhouse. The first movie was I think like kind of like an independent feature made by this director, whereas this was picked up obviously by Blumhouse, and this is made for a wider audience who like general horror films. In the first one, the father is dealing with like a midlife crisis where each time he's like going out to like a window or like an edge, and he's just like looking out to the distance and stuff. And you recognize as an audience member that this man is dealing with some hidden demons and stuff. Whereas the American remake is like, F that. No man has feelings. Let's give him something to actually be upset about. So there's a subplot in the American remake where the couple is dealing with like marriage issues. Like the wife received like a dick pic on her phone and it made him upset. That's the whole reason why he's upset. The first film did a really good job at like this, what is masculinity and like, what do I need to do to be, to feel more secure about myself and not so insecure. Whereas like this American remake, I don't know, the writers were just like, let's bump this up. Let's give him a reason to be upset. His wife's fucking another guy. Potentially. It was just a dick pic. But it's clear that like they're really, really trying to make this for the general audience member and not so subtle. They're really trying to boost the angst of like the original film by adding like these more maybe interesting things. And it's clear that they really wanted to do that with the ending. Whoever decided to do this remake, it's clear that they hated the ending as well to the first one. So this is going to be talking about spoilers. We're now going to be talking about the significant differences of these films, which is the ending. So they redid the ending, which I will say is the pro that I have for the American remake, because I like the ending for this. I think it's just a lot more fulfilling. It answers a lot of loose questions and stuff like that. So let's talk about the ending for the original one. So in the original one, the father finds out that this family makes friends with other families and they kidnap their kid and cut their tongue out and showcase to other couples that, hey, this is our kid. And then they do this in a repeated cycle where they'll kill the kid that they have and then adopt the other kid of the parents that they kill. And it's just an adopted cycle where they just like keep on killing people, taking their kids, find a new family, kill that kid, kill. It's ridiculous. And the dad is like, oh shit, yeah, we have to go. As if like the whole situation where the son is scolded for not dancing sufficiently is not enough for them to go. They decide to stay another night, but when he finds like the body of like the kid in the water, he's like, oh, okay, yeah, I have to go now. So he grabs his wife and kids, and you think that there's gonna be like a scene where like the tires are slashed or the car is not working. And no, sure enough, it actually works. He's just low on gas, and you're thinking to yourself like, oh, well, maybe he's just gonna run low on gas. No, he actually makes it to a gas station. So what's the catalyst of him like being caught again by this family? There's a car driving behind him and he thinks it's chasing him, but it's not actually the car of the Dutch family, and he like swerves his car like into like a ditch or something like that. It's just lazy writing. Like it's just like it's almost as if like it's purposely trying to make you upset. And what happens is that even though this family has been driving for like miles on end, because it takes a while to get to this house, the Dutch family ends up finding them. They get into their car and they actually end up cutting the tongue of the daughter that they have, and the little caretaker takes her away. They take the parents to a like middle of nowhere place with a lot of rocks. They make them strip down naked and they stone them to death. And then it cuts to the Dutch family going back to the same resort, except this time they have the Danish family's daughter, who is now mute because they cut their tongue out. But it's kind of like, this is why it's stupid. If they're going back to the same resort, there's going to be people there that recognize them, right? And it's like, hey, like you were here a month ago. You had a different child. Now you have this different child. What the fuck? So this is why the first film is incredibly frustrating, because it's just so mean-spirited for the sake of being mean-spirited. It's not even like really clever. It gets to that point stupidly. The writing is incredibly bad. And I think a lot of people had issues with this ending as well. I was reading some reviews on IMDb, and a lot of people were very upset about this ending. And it's clear that whoever decided to do this American remake felt the same. So yeah, let's talk about the American remake. So like I said, the American remake is a shot-for-shot remake, but it starts to change after the kids dancing altercation. That's when the movie becomes something of its own. So in the original one, the family has a Danish daughter who is very obsessed with her plush bunny. And there's instances where she loses the bunny and the dad has to go and find it. And this bunny is the main reason why when the family decides to leave, she can't find her bunny. So they have to turn back and go back to the Dutch family's house. And then there's this awkward confrontation of why they left without saying goodbye. So this bunny is a huge plot point in both of these movies. And it's somewhat relatable in the first film where you have like this young girl and she just wants her little bunny. You know, it makes total sense. Whereas in the American remake, the daughter is much older than the first daughter in the first film, where she's actually 12 years old. And I feel like I know why they decided to do this. I'm going to get into that soon. But in the second film, it doesn't really make sense as to why she cares so much for this plush bunny when she's like the age of 12. I understand that it's acknowledged in the film. The dad is constantly saying like, you've got to grow up, you got to get rid of this doll, or like you got to be a big girl or whatever. But just because the movie acknowledges it doesn't necessarily mean it makes sense. But it's kind of described that this little girl has anxiety attacks, I guess. And they use like this app, and the fucking bunny is associated with the app, or I don't fucking know. All you have to know is that she is 12 and she really, really needs this bunny to chill the fuck out. But the script writers were like, oh, she needs to be 12. And the reason being is because the one thing that they do different in the American remake is the little boy is trying really hard to tell the young girl that he is a victim of kidnapping and this family cut his tongue out. So he's trying really hard to tell her throughout the entirety of this American remake, which is pretty like understandable for the most part. I can see why the writers would want to do that. Whereas it gets to the point after when the movie finally changes into its own thing, the little boy takes the little girl down to this basement-like setting where he's able to show her like all of the cameras and suitcases that like the other families had prior to being killed and everything. And he's able to explain to her like, hey, this is what they did to me. They're gonna kill me and they're gonna take you eventually. So the reason why the little girl is 12 is because she has to have a fucking iPhone, because she needs to take pictures of all the evidence to showcase to her mom that this is something that's going to happen. And it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. I don't know. It's just really kind of forced writing, I guess. But I'm just like, yeah, as long as we don't get that like terrible fucking ending of the first one. The American remake also does a really good job as to telling why this fake family is doing all of this. In the first one, it was kind of just evil. You're kind of like, oh shit, like that happened for no reason. Whereas in the American remake, it seems like there is a little bit more of a motive. There's mention that James McAvoy's character doesn't like working or whatever, or he has some distaste for like the upper class. There's comments that he makes like passive aggressive remarks to like the wife being a vegetarian and stuff like that. The couple is also driving a Tesla up to this estate. So there is stuff mentioned where it's notion that this fake family clearly has issues with like upper class people, which yeah, okay, yeah, at least that's something. And it explains why they're able to like afford staying at this place and how they're able to eat, because they steal money from like the other families and stuff like that. So, and that might have been like the plot for the original one, but the fact that it's not really touched upon, it's just like, it leaves so many questions. Whereas in this American remake, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, we have something here. And so it evolves into a home invasion kind of film where the nice family decides to barricade themselves into the fake family's home, and they try to utilize like items around the house to like get away from them and stuff like that. And there's some pretty creative stuff, like the wife finds like spray and stuff like that. So There's some pretty cool things too. Plus, I think the ending of this film in particular is, if they wanted to, clearly like the directors of the first film wanted to do something dark. And I'm all for that. I like dark endings and stuff like that. But when it's just like dark for the necessity of being dark and it doesn't really earn it, that's when I really have an issue with it, especially when there's harm to children involved. The American remake, it's dark and it's somewhat fulfilling also. So we have the child with no tongue. He is able to basically kill James McAvoy with like a stone or whatever. And it's disturbing, but it's fulfilling when you kind of understand the perspective of this child throughout like however long he's been with his family and how this family killed his original family and he's finally getting his revenge and stuff like that. It works for the most part. I think that this will definitely be studied when we're talking about like foreign films that are transferred into American media or remade for an American audience. Whereas this is a good example of a film that a lot of people were very polarized by. They liked the first part of it, but the ending just wasn't like their cup of tea. And I think this is a good example of like taking something that had potential and turning it into something better or more appealing. If you have seen the first one, it is going to be a little rough watching this American remake because like I said, it's just a shot-for-shot remake. But if you are one of those audience members who really just didn't like that original ending to the Danish film, I think you're really going to appreciate what they do with the ending of this new remake right here. And James McAvoy, he is a gem in this film. I think if there's any reason why you need to go see this film, it is just his performance overall. He steals the entire show. So yeah, guys, that was really interesting. I might do more videos like that in the future where I compare foreign films to like American remakes. I've always wanted to do Rec and Quarantine. Like this video if you would like to see that video in the near future, because I think there are so many interesting things that I would love to talk about in terms of like Quarantine, what Quarantine did right, what Quarantine didn't do right. And it's just, Rec is one of my favorite horror films. So I'd love to talk about that in the near future. If you'd like to see that, like this video. And I'm excited to be filming in here more often. The set, like I said, is not done. I'm going to be having a table coming soon, but there are so many things I want to talk about in this room already. I haven't really been able to talk about a whole lot of things because I've been in the middle of moving and setting stuff up. So I have a catalog of stuff that I want to talk about. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you thought of See No Evil. Let me know if you saw the original and what you thought of that one. Like this video, share it, and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much. I'm Corbin Stuckey, and I really need an arm for this mic, so stay tuned.